y'all. I'm back. The countertop is dry. I actually ended up putting a third coat of the stone coat on, the step 2 last night to get it how I wanted it to look. And this morning, this morning touching it, it feels almost like a 60 grit sandpaper, not the roughness of sandpaper, but the amount of grit that's on there. On this side, actually, more than this side, because I've already been sanding a little bit. All the tape and everything is still on here, but this is the point where you decide how you want your countertops to be. And I want it to be a little bit smooth because my husband's a carpenter and he's picky about stuff like that. And so I'm wanting it to be a little bit smooth. So here's some of the samples. I'm trying to see which color will show the most of like the amount of texture that's on the sample. See how it has a little bit of hills and valleys, I guess you could say. It's not completely smooth. And this one, I guess, looks the sort of the roughest out of all of them. See how it has a little bit of texture to it? You can decide how much of that texture that you want on there, and that's how much you sand off. They gave us this piece of, in the kit, of 120 grit sandpaper, which is, fine, and what that's doing is leveling it down. But they also said, hey, if you want to, you can use a random orbital sander. Mine's at work in my other studio, of course, so I'm using this one of my husband's, which this probably weighs 20 pounds. And, this is a fancy schmancy, $200 one, to where I have a $29 one that I usually work with. But we're going to do what we got to do. The rolls for this particular one, you get the sandpapers like this. It has a little bit of sticky to it. You just stick the pad underneath here. It barely sticks, but then the friction of the heat when you start sanding with it helps it to stick better on there. I've already been sanding some, but the paper's still good. And this is one tip that I wanted to share. When you're using, and you could use the square sander too, like the flat pad sander, and I do have one of those, and I have one in the other room. But the thing is, this one has a control of how fast it can go, and that one doesn't. And it's going to be going so fast that I'm afraid when I'm butting up against the edges here on the back or things like that, that I'm going to go too deep and not get it even. And I've been sanding here a little bit this morning, and there's some areas that have a little more of a raised area than others. So we have to, sand over those to get it how you want it. This is pretty smooth, and I like it. The other side is still pretty tough, but I just wanted to give you a couple of tips on this. You're, going to want it kind of sitting down when you turn it on, and then it's your choice of whether to hold on to it and go flat across here, sort of back and forth and create a pattern so you're not going over the same area too many times, or whether to tilt it up a little bit and then use less pressure to reach those areas. And that's the way that I'm going to try to do it a little more of. But I didn't want, this is going to be loud, and I didn't want to do too much of it. I'm going to also be very careful going over the seams and things like that, because that's already an area that's going to expose something that, I don't want to look at. So I just wanted to come on for a second and show you this process. You could, if you were using, this also comes in big sheets. We can just use the one that they gave us and get a smooth surface. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way. You can put this around a sanding block or an old block of wood or something like that to give you something to help with the elbow grease there, and do the same thing. I'll probably use this along the top seams because I can't get the orbital sander up there, but that doesn't have to be as flush as I want this to be. Like I said, that's a personal preference. You don't, want to get this thing down to a polished mirror finish and then try to put your top coat on and have it not stick good. So we're just going and getting it smooth, knocking off the high points, and then I will vacuum this off with the, what do you call it, the shop vac, and then I'll take a damp rag and wipe it off so that there's not any of the grit. There's a good bit of grit. Let me show you this. Good bit of gritty sand that's coming off of there. And don't forget, and I almost did because I was sitting there jacking my jaws, when you're sanding anything, use yourself some protection to not breathe up the dust. So I'm going to turn this on for a second. Like I said, then I'll turn it off after that. Work on the smooth finish. I'll take some pictures in case you're following along to do this yourself. And then I'll come back and we'll put on the clear coat. Let me. That's good enough. It's covering. There's instructions on how to put this on, but this is good enough for me right now. So. This one, like I said, you can turn it up and down on the speed there. That's kind of hard to turn, but I've got it on a 1 because that's plenty enough. Better to go the back and forth, back and forth. I'm leaning the top down just a little bit. We'll be able to do the same here. I'm feeling for hiking. So I'm going to continue in that same manner until it's smooth all over, clean it off, and then we'll be back to top coat. Bye.